Hey guys, and welcome back. So yes, we have Yoon Seok-yeol, the conservative who is now the president-elect. His transition committee is being headed by his rival An Chol-soo. We'll get more into all of the policies and plans and the transition team, but right now what is bringing up the drama already when Yoon is not even president is whether or not they're going to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. The 20s males that Yoon Seok-yeol appealed to are really reeling under this anti-feminism crusade. And their argument is that it's unnecessary to have the gender ministry because it's so-called outdated because there is gender parity now in South Korea. Women's groups say that it is... Plutarch, stop being an anti-feminist. Women's groups are really upset about the idea, and let me tell you, I think what is going on is that more and more men, especially in their 20s, are being bullied by psychopathic women, and instead of going after psychopaths, whether they're men or women, they're trying to just attack all women, which is a dumb way to go. So instead of abolishing the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, I think the patriarchy and Korean men really have to own up to and face the fact that they've been using training wheels and crutches through life, and now those are being not really taken away, but being challenged, probably by women who can go through life without these training wheels and without these crutches. But for the most part, I do think that with the more increasing presence of women on the professional scene and also just in life and I think in the dating world, I think this is where the younger guys are having a problem, is that they're facing and seeing a lot more mean women, mean girls, girls who are, let's just say, probably psychopaths who were probably always there because, let's face it, a lot of the ajumas, grandmas, they're psychopaths too. However, in the past, you could use your maleness, you can use the power of being male to suppress those female bullies. Now, probably, the female bullies are just being more and more empowered in their bulliness. Not all of them, but probably the ones that abuse the young males and then they go crying home and saying like how unfair the world is, because it is unfair because of these psychopaths. I have absolutely no patience for people who abuse and bully others, and that includes women, but the solution is not to punish all women, especially the vulnerable who need these government agencies. The solution is to man up and stop the bullying, whether it comes from a man or a woman. So the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family was created in 2001. Kim Dae-jung brought it into its current form. There were some other iterations before that to deal with sexism, sexual harassment, and according to their official policy stance in this day and age, it's to coordinate women's policy, improve women's status, and the enhancement of women's rights. It's to support family policy and especially what we call multicultural family policy and protections and discrimination. And that multicultural essentially means if you have a blended family with a non-Korean spouse and then mixed children. Also protecting the welfare of youth and to prevent the violence against women, children, and to help victims of human trafficking. This is all under the guise of protection, equality, fairness. You do not want to make your female population in a society vulnerable, because for a country especially like Korea that is always complaining about the potential threat of being a small shrimp among whales, that's literally the expression. It's like, you know, we're a small country among like bigger powers like China, Japan, and even beyond the region. That makes the country always vulnerable for an invasion, which of course now we think like in this day and age couldn't happen, but what do we see in Ukraine with Putin? And the logic there is why that civil society was able to stand up to such a great and evil and empowered dictator like Putin is because of three essential facets of their society. Number one, you need to have a moral and historical imperative of why you need to defend your nation, why you deserve to have sovereignty, and why the people are willing to die for it. Number two, you have to have leaders who are willing to sacrifice above and beyond the normal limits or expectations. And so we see that in Zelensky. He's basically saying like, look, if I go, but at least I go dying and defending my country. But the third pillar is you need the participation of your nation's women to defend the country. It brings a moral imperative, and then it also just brings a power that probably cannot be quantified in rational terms. But if you have a weakened female population, abused female population, powerless female population, you will open your country up to kind of greedy outside forces who might look at me like, it might be time soon to be able to take Korea for ourselves. For a country that has always been and always is and is creating policies all the time to secure its status in the world and to protect its sovereignty at all times, it is the dumbest thing to go, especially for the conservatives who are really focused on national security, to disempower women. I hope I made it clear that we do not want to have another occupation, which we have had for almost the bulk of half of the 20th century in Korea. And I also believe that part of that reason was because of the entire decimation of women's rights and their subjugation in that time period. We even extol female independence fighters. Had we had more of them, maybe history would have gone a different way. Now, right now, the gender pay gap among OECD nations is the worst in South Korea. So we do not have gender equality. What the younger generation, though, are probably looking at is that there are actually more females in college. And then in the 20s workforce, there is some statistics saying that maybe pay equality is beginning to show up, or based on this meritocracy that the current president-elect wants to enforce, perhaps women are succeeding or performing better than men. But what I think it really comes down to is a feeling, and doesn't it always? It's always about the feeling. And what I am sensing is that men are feeling more and more bullied by women bullies in the workplace. Not saying that they're being bullied because it's just a woman. I think they are feeling really upset that, oh my God, now the bully is a woman? This is not supposed to be the way it works. Maybe I can handle being bullied by a male figure or boss, but a woman? Oh, heck no. Now, instead of dealing with a bully based on their bully identity, the solution that some of these men are trying to revert to is probably how their father's generation dealt with maybe women who are getting out of line. And women getting out of line, I would say, like, you know, maybe the mean girls. But they also are being misogynistic in the sense that they don't even want equality for the women who deserve to be the bosses or who deserve to be in positions of authority or who are doing well or should be rewarded as such. And I will say that I've had experiences with horrible female coworkers in Korea, but I've had horrible female coworkers in the United States as well. But I don't think I get that feeling of like, oh, well, a woman shouldn't do that to me, but I could definitely see a lot of guys here in Korea thinking like, oh, a woman shouldn't do that to me, and then they're blaming the woman part. No, blame the psychopathic part of that person, and if that person happens to be a woman, focus on her bullying or her psychopathic nature. Do not think that it's because of a gender imbalance you're being pwned. No, it's because she's a psycho. A psycho can be a man and a woman. And hey, if it's a woman, it's a woman. I mean, I've worked at all the broadcast companies, so I'll give you an example, but, don't assume which one it is just because, you might think it's one or the other. But there was a succession of 3 psychopathic employees, females, but it wasn't because they were female that they were horrible. They were just horrible people. However, I could see how people can misconstrue that it's a female thing to blame, because part of the playbook for a psychopath is to use our social structures, constructs, institutions to hide behind in order to gain credibility and innocence. So there was one psychopathic producer I had once, and she always tried to put on the face of an innocent, kind girl. Okay, fine. So she is abusing the traits and the value that we place upon a nice girl. But you don't attack all women just because she's abusing that as a cover. But I always saw through her. But even Korean people couldn't see through her. And I think maybe Korean people were actually a little bit more susceptible because she hit all the correct cues and targets of what makes a kind-hearted girl. A lot of it is in the facial expression of like, it's hard to explain, but basically it's kind of like in the doughy kind of eyes of like, oh, I have no ulterior motive. Watch out for those girls, especially if they have a big old mirror on their desk. A lot of people in Korea in the workforce will have mirrors on their desks, so don't think they're so crazy. But watch out if it's bigger than normal and if she's looking at it more than normal. And it wasn't because she was vain. I think she was trying to always make sure that she had her kind mask on. And I knew she was crazy because she started attacking and bullying me directly. They usually go after the ones first who see through their facade, and you got to get rid of those people because then they're going to maybe blow your cover. Well, it didn't really take that. I mean, I basically had to leave. I have our last conversation on tape, so if you want, if you want it on blast, I could put it on blast, but not because you're a girl, but because you're just a piece of trash. But it didn't take that long for her to then really show her true colors and antagonize and bully and the rest of the department. And soon that whole kind of image that she had, oh, the nice PD producer, the kind-hearted producer, for that to disappear, and she got severely punished, sent to that company's version of Siberia, and had to work under apparently like an abusive man. There was another girl there who was supposed to do recruiting and auditions for an on-camera post, and she manipulated the whole thing, and then she became the on-camera person. And I could see perhaps other people, other perhaps males in this situation, thinking that is so unfair, and then immediately move to gender. But no, she's just a bad person. And well, she has to deal with everybody talking behind her back now, saying like she's actually just horrible. But I don't think you should blame her for being a girl. Yes, she probably tried to amp up her female features to look good on camera and try to just be the eye candy to try to tip it over the edge. But that is not something that we should punish all women for and say that it's finally there's female equality just because there are women out there who are willing to use horrible methods to get ahead. No, they're just horrible people. And then there was another woman at this company, and she was just another bad person, not a bad woman, just a bad person. And I remember her being really racist against, okay, as you can be racist against Korean Americans. They view us as a different race, believe it or not. And we've been living in this country for a long time. And I remember we were at a team lunch, and she literally was like saying like, oh, you guys, oh yeah, you're from America, you don't eat Korean food at home. Like as if she knew us, was in our houses. Of course we eat Korean food at home, girl. What do you think? She's like, oh, I just thought you just ate like steak and pasta all the time. And she got like really offended and mad that her assumptions about us, barely knowing us, was wrong. And I had to deal with her in order to try to create a resolution with the other crazy producer, the psycho producer, and she was not, you could tell she was also like kind of similar to that crazy girl, and so that's probably why they kind of meshed a little bit. But I could see like another person maybe in my position saying like, oh, these women, but it's not because they're women. It's because they're just trash, just trashy people. And there are trashy men who were in that company as well, as in every single company. I think that people who are getting upset about the women part have something in their mind where they just don't feel like they deserve to be bullied by a woman. I think that's probably the wrong road to take. Nobody deserves to be bullied by anybody of any gender. If you're being bullied by a woman, that doesn't make you less of a man. It just basically, actually for a while, I was just thinking like, in a kind of twisted way, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of good that these women are feeling empowered to be such jerks. At least that part is kind of getting equal, but it in no way excused their behavior. And should we let that behavior go on, they should be held to the same standards of human decency as everybody else. And you can do that. If you're a real man, you can do that. You can stand up for yourself. You could basically say like, look, I'm not gonna put up with this, or I'm gonna leave. And that's what I did. I had to leave. And so, you have to, and I don't even think of that as a defeat. It's just, I have my standards, and I have walked away from projects where the bully was a man too. So it all depends on you, dude. If you're the dude who can't handle bullies, then you really are in for a tough ride, especially in Korea, because now, sure, the bullies will be men and women, but at the same time, your allies, your friends in the workplace, the people who you start to form nice, great relationships, cherish and admire, work together, build teamwork, will also be women. And you really want to have a balanced workforce, and you really want to work with great, strong women as well. It just makes you so much better. It's so inspiring. So those people who think that like abolishing the gender ministry is gonna solve your problems or your like way of being bullied around by a woman in the office, is not going to solve that problem. Crazy people come in both genders. They will always be there. Always remember that when you have all these, family dramas, family conflicts in Korea, the aggressor, the psychopath, is also sometimes the mother or the grandmother. There are people, women throughout history who have acted badly, and just because they show up more often because civil society in Korea has been crumbling doesn't mean that you have to try to attack a whole gender, especially the most vulnerable of that gender, in order for you to feel like you can maintain some sort of semblance of yourself, get back, or like have equality, your version of equality, or in general, which the worst thing is that you don't even feel that, you just want to have an unfair advantage, just like your fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, time immemorial have had. But like I said, the danger of that especially in our modern 21st century, look at what happens when you have an aggressor like Putin, and if half of your population has been disempowered, you'll get invaded. You'll get invaded, and that'll be too late. These types of weakenings of social structures do not happen overnight, and they cannot be fixed in a day. So abolishing the gender ministry right now is a step in the multi-year process that now other countries can probably start looking at Korea and be like, well, if they're going to they're going to devalue their women, that makes them a more vulnerable target for takeover. So, South Korea, do you really want to be invaded again? It has not even been 100 years since the end of Japanese occupation. Do you want another country to be able to come in and have South Koreans not be able to stand up for their own sovereignty? Protect the women, and if you're being bullied by a horrible woman who is not a nice person, it's not because they're a woman that they're not a nice person. They're just a piece of trash, regardless of their gender. Fight against psychos and trash. Don't fight against women. It makes you look weak. You gotta be able to distinguish between your hatred against a psychopath and your hatred against women. If you just hate women in general, that makes you just a loser. But if you hate a psychopath who happens to be a woman, then focus on the psychopath part, not the woman part. But since Korean politics is just dirty, muddy, and a pigsty, and nothing comes without leverage and fighting in the gutter, this is what I would recommend. I hope this doesn't sound so shady. But I think what the female activists have to do, or any activists who want to support gender equality, you're not going to get it by arguing the rational, intellectual, logical steps. You gotta make the other side feel it. Once again, it's all about feelings. And if you want to go after the top dog that is going to get rid of the gender ministry, you gotta make him the one to feel it. So you know what? Go after his wife. I think she's fair game. Go after his wife, who on the campaign had, well, she didn't say this publicly, but she basically said it to a reporter, and then that got leaked publicly. Obviously, one of these people who are not a friend to female rights, who will be willing to sell out her own gender for her to advance. That doesn't make her a bad woman. That makes her a bad person who is a woman against other women. So I think she should just go after the wife and make her feel all the things that this misogynistic country can do to a woman and have her realize that we need to have the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. If it needs to be reformed, then reform it. But we need to have, in Korea, there's no way to have protection and power unless it's on a ministerial level that has the blessing of the president. Otherwise, it's just going to be hollow enforcement and lip service, and real victims will not be able to get any sort of justice, protection, and the biggest thing, deterrence. You need to deter these abusers of women with some ministry and laws and standard operating procedures that have real teeth to them. And if you can't make Mr. President-elect Yoon feel that, then make him feel it by needing to protect his wife. Discrimination that has been weaponized so effectively on all levels of society, all stages of life. How long are they going to wait? You're going to wait until you're dead for equality? No. Let's do it now. All right, guys, what do you think? Do you think we should really abolish the Ministry of Gender and Family Equality? Because, well, what I outlined is because I think these guys are feeling upset that they're being bullied by women. Or is there a greater thing out there that you feel like makes sense to get rid of, even though we have extreme inequality here? Or put your ideas on how to fight to preserve it. All right, guys, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.